Hey everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Closing Report for April 13th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. We saw a continuation to the upside here today in the ES. This is a look at the daily time frame right now. A nice continuation through recent highs and a push through 61s, and recently basically pushing into our 77.5 key level. That's the level we've been gunning for as well. So when we talked about a move into 2061s, I mentioned that we could see some spillage over into 2077.5, and we finally reached it today after the shakeout the previous session. I could see further upside price discovery here. We have a primary target for the week that's been reached at 76, and then we have the secondary here at 2091.75 for the week. So given the current week's low price, right now an average range to the upside on an average week over the last 10 weeks would put us right in the 2091.75. So there could be more upside ahead. The key level to watch here is going to be 2061 quarter. That's very important there, and that's value. So coming back to value after having been defended off that level will be very important. So any early weakness that we see overnight or perhaps early in the session tomorrow could offer an opportunity for bulls to defend and squeeze into 2091s. Now, what we're looking for, as we mentioned before, we were looking for price to come into 61s and just chop around and get stuck in the mud. But what we're looking for is for the impulse range to show itself that will define a larger range. The market cannot conduct business in this narrow range here, so we're going to have to see some expansion. Once we see some expansion to the upside, perhaps into 2100, we could see a blow off top that brings us back down, perhaps into 2000, and now we have a 100-point range to conduct business in over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So that's something I'll be looking at. But early on, let's look for a pullback to buy and continue higher to find that high, and then from there we'll be looking to fade it the opposite way. Now looking at the intraday time frame, you can see here price push beyond the previous month's high and also above 2064 half. This is what I mentioned early on in the pre-market report, is that you got to watch 2064 half, because if price pushes above the zone and can't hold, we could be looking at a move lower. But if bulls can continue to defend 2064s, then you should see a push into 77.5, and you can see price got right into 77 today after holding that previous month's high price at 2064. So this is still important. This level here at the previous week's high is important. Pullbacks into any of those zones could be buying opportunities in the upcoming day. We just have to see how price responds upon any retracement into those zones. Now, taking a look here at the 2091s, that is the secondary weekly target on the PivotBoss ADR method. And basically, again, a pullback, perhaps in the 61s, could offer an opportunity to squeeze into 91s. That could be a 90 handle trade. Otherwise, failure to hold 61s, auctions price all the way back into 34s. All right, let's take a look now at crude oil. Crude oil here saw a significant continuation to the upside after squeezing through the previous month's close and approached the previous month's high. Did not quite come into contact with that 42.49, but got very, very close. And then we started to see some weakness here. And now we're starting to see a little bit of price slow down after that recent squeeze. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on 42.49. That's an area where we could see some near-term weakness. You can see here prices tried to hold, eventually sold off. The first retest was also rejected. Now we're back at it again. You can see a very clear range that has developed here. We could be on the way back down within that range. We could see a pullback that is defended and leads to a squeeze. There's several scenarios that I'll be watching for. But the early idea is that if price cannot see acceptance above 42.49s, fade it back to 38.86. That's a short-term key level target right there. That's a high probability target if price cannot hold above this high. Any squeeze through 42.49 and a hold suggests a continuation higher. And again, we have that HVN above that we can target at 47.92. Now, based on this key range from 35.24 up to 42.49, if we do see upside expansion, 49.74 would be the 100% expansion target. So we could see that there could be some significant movement once we do get resolution out of this range. I'm just not sold that we'll get some immediately. I think we backfill a bit and then look to develop or establish a trading range that eventually results in expansion. All right, taking a look at the intraday time frame. if this is going to retrace and pull back, perhaps toward 40, keep an eye on 42.49. That's the major level to watch. The previous month's high here. If price pushes above this zone again, man, watch for any failed range expansion, because that could be the level and the time that we see some type of movement back toward 40s. So keep that in mind. Any push above here, if it can't hold, boom, a retest could be defended, and you could be looking at a big time push lower. Any push beyond the previous month's high needs to be significant, so that when price does push through it, any retracement would then be defended for a continuation by bulls. So there's several scenarios to watch out for, but 42.49 is the level to watch. All right, taking a look at gold. Here's gold on the intraday time frame, or on the higher time frame rather. What we saw was a big time push lower after the prices failed to hold or even see acceptance beyond 1265.60. We saw a big pullback into 1241.70, and bulls came in to defend not only composite VPOC at 1245.70, but also the previous week's high and close. That tells us right there are bulls defending this zone right now, and that gives us an indication of what's going on in the market. It tells us bulls are defending this pullback, they're defending value, and that would suggest an upside push. That also tells us that there are sell stops that are now developing or forming below, building below that 1240. So if prices can't hold above 1240, that could be basically a momentum move down based off those sell stops getting run. So keep an eye on 1245.70 as composite VPOC. Watch this 1241.70 here. This entire zone has been defended by bulls, likely for another try at the 1270s. Otherwise, failure to hold 1240 opens up movement back toward 1208.30. All right, let's take a look at the NQ. The NQ saw a nice swing move up. I know before we were looking at fading the midpoint of this range for a continuation downward, but then when prices failed to see range expansion beyond the previous session's low, in the trading room we were looking at a push back higher. And since then, this failed range expansion to the downside has led to a push to the opposite end. And that's what we were cautioning about before. Remember, we were talking about before that the initial move can oftentimes be a false move, and that's what we saw this time. False move down, and you see it change directions and push higher. Now we're seeing an expansion of the range, because when we were here, we had to auction down, then up and down and back, and we're starting to establish that range. I would think we see a little bit more strength here before perhaps seeing a rotation back down. So perhaps we could see continuation into 45.89s, at which point we may begin to see a little weakness back down toward 4400s and then establish a range similar to what could happen in the ES. But currently speaking, we have early strength here. So early weakness that pulls back, we could see a follow through and see a follow through to the upside. So this early strength here, followed by a pullback and early weakness here, could lead to some nice continuation to the upside, perhaps into 45.89 by the end of the week, and that could be sooner than later. Keep an eye on the previous week's high though. So if we look at the intraday time frame, here's the previous week's high, 45.43.75. That's going to be a very important level. You can already see it was resistance a couple of times. Bulls defended the open, and then price pushed above and closed above the high. So this is a big time zone right here to watch, because if in overnight trading price immediately sells off below that zone and can't get back above it, these participants get trapped, and then you're likely going to see a big time move back to 5-day VPOC, which is 44.85.75. Any push or continuation beyond 45.55 here opens up a continuation into that 45.89 we mentioned earlier. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out the rest of the week. Good luck and trade well.